Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Come this way. You're gonna have a seat and stand there.
Morning.
Good morning.
Tell us your name, please, ma'am.
Sally Marie Smith.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a pediatrician.
And where do you presently practice your profession?
I'm a partner in a pediatric general practice in St. Petersburg called Fifth Avenue Pediatrics.
And you have several other pediatricians that work with you in that practice?
Yes,
And that's basically a private practice of pediatrics?
it is.
Would you give the jury a brief, I think the jury's heard some of this, but if you give the jury a brief overview of your background and training in your profession, please.
Okay. My undergraduate degree was Bachelor of Science in Biology from Georgetown University in 1980. I went to St. Louis University School of Medicine and graduated in 1984. Pediatrics is a 3-year training. And so I did my first year and a half of my pediatric residency at what was then All Children's Hospital. And then I moved back to St. Louis and completed my residency at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital, which is the children's hospital affiliated with St. Louis University. And I did an additional year of training in what they call ambulatory pediatrics. I sort of had a career path trying to be a teaching general pediatrician. And so that was the focus of that additional year of training.
Okay. And did there come a point in your career at which you became interested in child abuse pediatrics?
Yes, actually, when I was in medical school.
Tell us how that came about and how you developed that specialty.
I believe I actually became interested first because of some children that were in the ICU when I was a resident who had bad injuries. And when I did my, in medical school, I got ahead of myself. In medical school, I did a rotation with the county medical examiner who ran the morgue in the city of St. Louis. And because I was interested in pediatrics, she had me review all of the pediatric deaths from abuse that she'd seen over a period of maybe 10 years leading up to when I was there. And that got me very interested in the idea. And then as a resident, I saw additional children that increased my interest. And then in my fellowship in ambulatory pediatrics, I worked with the director of the sexual abuse evaluation program at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. I worked with them like once a week or close to that, seeing children in their sexual abuse evaluation program.
Did you subsequently undergo additional training in child abuse pediatrics?
So because of when I started this, which was in the late 80s, there wasn't really what's called fellowship training in child abuse pediatrics. So what I ended up learning over the years was mostly through experience. And beginning in 1988, I was the director of a sexual abuse evaluation program in New Brunswick, New Jersey at the Robert Wood Johnson University School of Medicine. And I was a teaching general pediatrician there. And then in 1990, I moved back to Florida and I actually took a general pediatrics faculty position at All Children's Hospital. And as part of my job, I asked them if I could work with the child protection team. And so from there, I just ended up seeing virtually all the children that have come through All Children's Hospital for the last 32 years for who needed evaluations for alleged child abuse and neglect. So I gained my training, if you will, in the trenches, just seeing children, looking things up, reading about it, checking with expert colleagues, learning from the radiologists, the neurosurgeons, the other people who work with these children down at All Children's, and ended up acquiring a pretty high level of expertise.
Did there come a point in time at which you applied for board certification in child abuse pediatrics?
Yes. So in 2009 was the first year that a board certification was made available for the specialty of child abuse pediatrics. And at that time, as I mentioned, because there wasn't really a fellowship in child abuse pediatrics, which would be 2 or 3 years additional training, the people who were allowed to sit for the exam could also be people who had at least 5 years experience in evaluating children for child abuse, were working in that specialty for at least 20 hours a week, which I qualified for both of those. And also you needed to have essentially a letter sent to the American Board of Pediatrics from someone who was kind of a recognized expert in child abuse, who would sort of vouch for you, that you were a person that should be allowed to take the exam. So I took that exam, I believe in November of 2009. It was in the fall. And then I think early January was notified that I had passed the exam and therefore was board certified in child abuse pediatrics.
Okay. Now, did there come a time in your career at which you became involved with the child abuse, or excuse me, the child protection team for Pinellas County?
Yes, so I worked for All Children's. I'm going to keep leaving out the Johns Hopkins because I've just been using that term for 32 years. But anyway, when I went to All Children's to join the faculty, I started working with the child protection team in Pinellas County, and the hospital basically had an arrangement where they billed the child protection team when I saw cases for them for the hours that I worked, and allowed me to have the time to do that. And so for that 12-year period when I was working for the hospital, I was on campus. And so vast majority of the children who were hospitalized where there were allegations of child abuse and neglect and a medical evaluation was requested, I did those evaluations. So I was a consulting pediatrician for the child protection team during those 12 years. In November of 2002, their medical director left, and they asked me if I would take over as the medical director. So at first I tried to work out a way to keep my job at All Children's and also do that, but it wasn't really very practical. And so I ended up resigning from All Children's at that time and became the medical director for the child protection team. So for Pinellas County, that's about a 20-hour a week. I ended up working more like 26, I believe, over time, but it's about a 20-hour per week job. And so I did that, and within a few months, I started working at this private practice where I still am.
Okay. Let me back up a little bit there and try to clarify a couple of things. You indicated you resigned from what was then just All Children's Hospital,
Right.
No Johns Hopkins,
Right.
in 2002. Is that right?
Correct.
And at that time, you became the director of the child protection team for Pinellas County, correct?
Right. The term they use for the physician is the medical director. So I was the medical director. Yes.
So, what is a child protection team, and who constitutes it? Who were you working for at that time?
So the child protection teams, Florida has a kind of a model program for the country, and it was set up in the late 70s. I think that All Children started.
Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond scope. Sustained. Move to strike.
Sorry?
Sustained.
Can we approach him?
Sure.
Here we go. It's gonna get good. I hope. Look at her. Come on. Okay. So I bet you she'll be on the stand a couple hours, probably till lunch, and my side is gonna rip into her. She sounds nervous though in her voice. Her voice sounds shaky. I know there's going to be so many sidebars. Oh my gosh. All the time. I should have kept track how many minutes each time. But I haven't watched Yep. How are you today? I am tired. I've been up since 6. So I got what? 2, 3, 4, 4 hours of sleep.
Mr. Hunter's going to ask a different question, and the jury will just disregard that last question.
I'm going to fast forward a little bit, if we can, without a history lesson.
Okay. Sure.
The CPT, well, let me back up. We've talked about that you resigned from Johns Hopkins from All Children's Hospital in 2002.
Right.
And have you ever worked for them or been employed by All Children since then?
No.
Have you ever been employed by Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
No.
Or Johns Hopkins?
No.
Okay. Without going into the historical details, well, let me lay the predicate this way. When you saw Maya Kowalski in 2016, were you the medical director of the Pinellas County Child Protection Team at that time?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And you had been so since 2002 in one role or another?
Correct.
And tell the jury, if you would, what a child protection team is.
Okay.
Objection again, beyond scope.
No, she can answer that question.
So in Florida, each county is covered by a child protection team. It's a multidisciplinary team that includes a medical director, usually nurse practitioners or sometimes other physicians from the county who are supervised by that medical director, and social workers who serve as what are called case coordinators. So they communicate with all the people involved in a particular investigation or case. And they also have like a team psychologist, for example, that's contracted, a team attorney, I believe. So it's a multidisciplinary team with these members, and it provides, especially in Pinellas County, one of the biggest functions of the child protection team is to provide medical evaluations when there are allegations of child abuse and neglect. And there are certain criteria that are set up under statute in terms of which kinds of situations warrant a medical evaluation. And so we kind of follow that list, if you will, in responding to requests for evaluations. The vast majority of the time, the request is made by the Child Protective Investigation Division under the Department of Children and Families. The child protection teams are under the Department of Health in Florida. And so they work side by side, but DCF doesn't run the child protection teams. And so they request for us to help them in investigating their case by looking at the medical information and guiding them in terms of whether there's medical evidence that would support a diagnosis of child abuse and neglect, and whether a child's safety is at risk as a result of that.
Okay. So in any given situation of a child abuse investigation, what is the role of the child protection team and its medical director in pursuing that investigation or facilitating that investigation?
So primarily the role is to provide that medical evaluation, and it kind of varies exactly how much work is required to do that. But also we end up being a go-between on with the dependency attorneys, the child protective investigators, the detectives or law enforcement that may be involved in a case, again, to provide that medical expertise to assist everybody in making a good decision for the child. We present information in court on a fairly regular basis and assist the dependency judge or the juries in evaluating the cases for whatever legal action may be needed. And one of my roles, which is also in statute, is to provide education for community medical providers.
It's going well beyond. Overruled.
So in that role, particularly for a teaching hospital like Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, it's important. The residents are required to have a certain amount of training in evaluating child abuse and neglect. And so over the years, I've been involved in that element as well to help provide education for the medical students and residents there at the hospital.
And do your statutory duties as medical director of the CPT, in your understanding, require that you consult with healthcare providers in a situation where a child has been sheltered?
There certainly are scenarios in which that's an important component of what were my responsibilities. Not always, but many times, especially in more complicated cases, the treating physicians at the hospital may need an ability to consult someone who is more expert in child abuse or neglect case for a variety of reasons.
Now, in the fall of 2016, and particularly in September and October of 2016, you told us that you were the medical director of the Pinellas County Child Protection Team at that time.
Correct.
What other hats did you wear as a pediatrician in the community at that time? So
I had my private practice. At that time, I was working half-time there. Now I'm full-time. And I also, ever since I moved to Pinellas County in 1990, I had active medical staff privileges at All Children's Hospital. I do to this day. And that doesn't mean anything about being employed by the hospital or being somehow under the hospital, but the medical providers that go in the door there have to have credentialing in order to go in and see patients, communicate with the other physicians, review the medical records and the radiology studies and lab work and all those kinds of things. And so that was essentially another hat where I was active medical staff with the hospital. And then as a community pediatrician, and obviously I'd been there for 12 years, so I was well known to the medical staff members, and they asked me to be a representative on a number of hospital committees over the years as a representative of the community to sort of bring that to the table. So I think at the time in 2016, those were the main additional roles that I had besides being the medical director of the child protection team with regards to All Children's.
Okay. At that time, in the fall of 2016, did you have what we refer to as staff privileges, medical staff privileges at hospitals other than Johns Hopkins All Children's?
Yes, I believe the only one as of 2016 would have been Bayfront Medical Center, which is Orlando, St. Pete now or something, where I've had privileges since 2002 to see newborns in the nursery there. I mean, I have staff privileges, but that's what I actually use them for.
Okay, so you would have privileges to practice both at Bayfront Medical Center and at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
Yes, and in addition to being able to walk in the door and evaluate children as the medical director of the child protection team, in 2016, I still had some patients from my practice that were complicated patients that sometimes I would admit to the hospital and manage their care. That was a different hat. That's my private practice side. That's all been taken over by the hospitalists in recent years, but I used to do that multiple times a year, admit my own patients to the hospital.
Okay. Now, in this particular case, how did it come about that you became involved with Maya Kowalski?
So the main way I became involved was because there was a report concerning child abuse or neglect.
Objection. It's the scope of that. Fact of report that, unless I get.
Agreed.
This is,
Okay, my people. Hi, 23. Good morning, Grandma. You know what I say about this? This is what I say. That's what I say to her. There'll be more to come. You should be nervous, lady. Oh my God. I can't believe another sidebar, you guys. Oh. Yeah. Oh, here we go.
You may continue, Mr. Hunter.
thank you, Your Honor. Now, please score. Let me focus this a little bit.
Okay.
In early October of 2016, did you receive a call regarding Maya Kowalski from Dr. Beatrice Tepa-Sanchez?
Yes, I did.
And at that time, when you received that call, did you have any knowledge of Maya Kowalski or her admission to All Children's Hospital?
No, that was the first I learned of it.
Okay. And Dr. Tepa-Sanchez contacted you regarding concerns that she had.
Yes.
And what did you do to tell us very specifically, and not at any length, if you would, what you did in response to that phone call?
I talked to her on the phone she was asking me about what to do about a possible case of, I believe her terms were Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And we talked about the kinds of things that are needed to assess that diagnosis, such as medical records.
Objection as to.
You can continue, Mr.
Okay, great. Sorry.
And we also talked briefly, as I recall, about this specific case. And I tried to give general advice in terms of how pediatricians can approach concerns for Munchausen syndrome by proxy, or what I prefer to call medical child abuse.
And were you called at that point as a member of the child protection team or as a medical staff member at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, or do you know?
My understanding was I was being called as the person they all had known for 32 years to be the hospital expert in child abuse and neglect, as an active medical staff member, and another active medical staff member was seeking my assistance, advice about what to do about a case where there was concern.
Now, with a call such as that, would that be considered a consultation?
That would be my understanding of that's what I thought it was.
Did you access the medical records from Maya Kowalski at that time?
I believe I did briefly. Yes.
And did you take any further action as far as evaluating the patient herself and her medical care at that time?
No, because to do anything as a child protection team medical director, I need to be asked by the investigators to provide a medical evaluation. And at that time, to my understanding, there was no actual investigation ongoing yet. And Dr. Tepa Sanchez wasn't the person under Florida law who can ask me to provide that medical evaluation. So it was a Saturday, as I recall, 1-ish in the afternoon, and we had a little discussion at that time. And then I honestly didn't think about it more, do anything more about it until Monday when I got that referral where the child protection team was asked to provide a medical evaluation.
So between the time that you spoke with Dr. Tepa Sanchez and looked at the chart briefly, and the time you were advised of an investigation on Monday morning,
As I recall, it was Monday morning, yes.
did you take any action to render diagnosis, care, or treatment to Maya Kowalski?
None whatsoever.
And so you had a brief telephone conversation, and until you were told there was an investigation, you took no other action to involve yourself in this patient's care.
Correct.
Now, once you were advised of the investigation, did you undertake well, first of all, and I want you to answer this question very narrowly.
Okay.
Were you advised of an investigation and asked to conduct a medical evaluation as the medical director of the child protection team?
Yes.
And is that the point at which you began your investigation of the case?
That's the point at which I began my medical evaluation of the case. I wasn't the investigator. Those are other people. I was providing a medical evaluation for the child protection team to assist those other people.
Okay. And in conducting that investigation, were you acting as a medical staff member of All Children's Hospital, in other words, a pediatrician in consultation, or were you acting as the medical director of the child protection team?
You know, there's a slight overlap because the privileges that I have at the hospital allow me to review their records and enter the building and examine children and things like that. So there was a slight element of my active medical staff credentialing that was in play, but primarily I was acting as the medical director of the child protection team.
Who was conducting the care of Maya Kowalski at that point?
At that point, she was in the pediatric intensive care unit at All Children's. And so the ICU physicians, the pain management team, I'm not sure if there were any other consultants that were involved at that point. Certainly all the nursing staff and the support staff and everything were the ones that were managing her care. In not just this case, but in child abuse cases, I don't really get involved with the management, day-to-day management of the children at all. My role is specifically to do this medical evaluation. And so I focus on that part and not really anything related to, you know, whether the child gets a regular diet or what medications they're on or how often they're getting vital signs or any of that kind of thing.
And is your involvement in the medical evaluation as the CPT medical director part of in your understanding, part of your statutory duties as the medical director of the child protection team?
Yes.
With respect to Maya Kowalski, did you ever write a consultation in her chart?
So the physicians that are treating the children that I see down there for a child abuse evaluation obviously are going to be helped if they know all of the medical data related to that potential diagnosis. And so recently there's a different electronic medical record system and it doesn't exist anymore. But at the time that I was involved with this case, what I would routinely do would be to provide my medical report to the treating physicians at the hospital to assist them. And that's okay when they basically ask me if they can have my information, my report, then I can provide it to them. There was a sort of a super confidential kind of process that was set up so that not, the housekeeping staff couldn't look at these medical records, but a physician who was logged in that manner could see the child protection team report and could, utilize that for either that time they were in the hospital or maybe a subsequent time they were in the hospital. That doesn't really occur the last 4 or 5 years or so, but that was in place at that time.
But your report would not have been placed into this portion of the chart you're referring to until you actually rendered it, completed it, and signed it much later, correct?
Typically correct, yes.
Okay. When you are in private practice, when you're managing a patient, well, let me ask you this way. When you're managing a patient in a hospital, whether it's Bayfront or Johns Hopkins, wherever, and you call for a consultant, a specialty consultant,
Yes.
what typically happens? You get a consult report in the chart?
Right. I mean, I had many years of experience, like as an actual in-hospital person, and that's what's typical. A consult order gets written. In this case, it's different because there's no consult in the all children's medical record for a child protection team evaluation. That has to go through child protection team and child protective investigations in the state of Florida. So there's never a consult order for a child abuse evaluation from a hospital physician. What they do is they make a report, or their typically social worker that's involved with the case makes a report to the hotline. That's how it works in Florida. That's how it works at All Children's.
Okay, so during the time that Maya Kowalski was at All Children's, did you ever write an order in her chart?
No, I did not.
Did you ever write a progress note in her chart?
No.
Did you from time to time talk with the physicians that were caring for her?
Yes.
But did you see her or round on her on a day-to-day basis?
No, I saw her one time, I believe on October 13th, 2016. And I saw her one time in early November, probably between 5 and 15 minutes each time. Those were the only times I ever saw her while she was in the hospital.
And what was the purpose of your seeing her those 2 times?
So part of my medical evaluation is supposed to be a physical examination. So when I saw her on October 13th, I was trying to perform a physical examination, which basically she declined. So in November, again, as part of my job as the child protection team medical director, I'm supposed to do a physical examination, and I'm also supposed to provide photo documentation for investigators and whoever else is involved in the case. So I went that day in early November to try to take some photographs of her lower extremities in terms of trying to essentially document the absence of a problem.
And did you take any such photographs?
I did not.
Did you ever interview Mr. or Mrs. Kowalski?
I took, as part of my medical evaluation, I took a fairly extensive history from Mrs. Kowalski and a much more abbreviated history from Mr. Kowalski. The meeting with Mrs. Kowalski took place on October 11th, 2016, and the relatively brief interview or history taking with Mr. Kowalski occurred on October 13th.
Okay. Did you ever speak to the 2 of them together?
I did not.
When you spoke with Mrs. Kowalski, first of all, where was it?
So at that time, Maya was still in the pediatric ICU, They have like a family conference room kind of thing outside of the main entrance to the pediatric ICU. And because of the investigation that was being initiated and everything, I scheduled a time where the child protective investigators and the people in law enforcement that were investigating the case could join me to while I took my medical history. So there, as I recall, there were about 5 of those people, 2 or 3 child protective investigators, I think 2 law enforcement people, and Mrs. Kowalski. They were all in that room already when I got there for the scheduled meeting, which I believe began at 5:45 in the evening on the 11th.
Okay. Did you identify yourself to Mrs. Kowalski?
Absolutely.
How did you identify yourself?
I always say, I'm Dr. Sally Smith. I'm a pediatrician with the child protection team. And that's what I said to her.
And the other folks who were there were either law enforcement or child protection investigators?
Yes, it's possible one of the nurses was in there, but otherwise, those were the people that I recall being present.
Okay. Were you wearing a lab coat?
No.
Do you ever wear a lab coat at all?
Well, at All Children's, no. I do in my office now since the pandemic, but for 20 years, I never wore a lab coat.
Do you wear, when you're in a hospital, do you wear a particular identification badge?
Yes, I have to wear my Johns Hopkins All Children's identification badge to come in the door and to, move around. There's all these little things you put your badge up to open doors. And I have a similar one for Bayfront.
Okay. So if you're in Bayfront, for example, you wear a Bayfront badge. If you're at All Children's, you wear an All Children's badge.
Correct. And when I go in between, I switch badges.
Okay. When you spoke with Mrs. Kowalski, was there any question that you had identified yourself as a member of the child protection team?
Absolutely none.
And did you conduct that investigation in any way as an employee or agent of All Children's Hospital, or Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
No.
Did you ever hold yourself out to Mrs. Kowalski as acting on behalf of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
No. As I said, this was a scheduled meeting. Everybody knew exactly what was happening.
Did Mrs. Kowalski know?
Absolutely.
How do you know that she knew that?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Are you aware of how Mrs. Kowalski might have known that this meeting was going to take place?
As I said, they were all in the room when I got there. So she, and I believe some of these people had already interviewed her as part of their investigation. She probably recognized some of these people. They got on their badges and their, work-related clothing and things like that. So,
Objection, again, speculation.
Overruled, she can say what she saw.
so, and I introduced myself. I don't quite see how it's possible that she didn't know who I was and what was happening.
How long did that meeting take place?
About an hour and a half.
And you subsequently had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Kowalski?
Yes. So,
I'll
Okay.
follow up on that. When did you talk with Mr. Kowalski?
so that was on October 13th, and I'm honestly not sure exactly what time.
Okay. And how long did that discussion or meeting last?
I would guess about 10, maybe 15 minutes.
And who was present for that meeting?
The bedside nurse, I'm pretty sure she was still in the ICU that day, and Mr. Kowalski and Maya.
Did you identify yourself to Mr. Kowalski?
Yes, I did.
And how did you identify yourself?
I said, I'm Dr. Sally Smith. I'm a pediatrician with the child protection team.
And did you at any point advise Mr. Kowalski that you were acting on behalf of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
No.
Were you attired in much the same way as you were when you spoke with Mrs. Kowalski?
I was wearing professional street clothes both times.
Okay. And again, no lab coat.
No. I would have had my badge on both times because I was in the building, but otherwise just professional street clothes.
Now, at the time that you spoke with both Mr. and Mrs. Kowalski, and I think I'm getting the dates right, around the 11th and the 13th of October respectively, were you aware of any efforts being made to transfer Maya to another institution?
So I would say during that week, I knew that that was being investigated by, I believe, the hospital. I can't tell you exactly what day I knew that, but I definitely knew that there was an effort being made to transfer her to an inpatient intensive rehab facility.
And were you involved in that effort at all?
No,
Were you directing that effort at all?
no,
Were you directing any of the medical care of the patient at that time?
no.
How did you know that was going on?
That's why I'm not sure exactly the time frame. I know that week there was a multidisciplinary staffing that took place with people from the Sarasota County investigators and child protection team and myself. And I believe there was discussion at that meeting. I believe that meeting was on the 13th, but I'm not 100% sure. But there were multiple discussions that I had with the treating physicians at All Children's that they were trying to make that kind of thing happen.
And did you have any understanding about whether there was an effort being made to wean Maya Kowalski's medication or reduce her medication as part of that effort?
I did not really, have any involvement with any of that. I believe at one point later in October, maybe right around now, October of 2016, that I knew that that was happening.
Okay. And did you learn of that from the physicians directing her care, or did you attempt to direct that care yourself?
I learned that from communication with the attending physician.
Okay. And do you typically follow that as part of your statutory duties as child protection team medical director? In other words, follow the course of the patient's care.
Yes. Typically when I've seen a child, and then as I'm writing my report, I kind of go back in the chart, see what's happening, put some of the quote unquote hospital course into my report, and then, reach the conclusion. This was a much more extensive, lengthy process. So at that point, at the end of October, I hadn't, done any report or anything, but I was still in communication with them related to what was happening with the child abuse part of the case.
Okay. Now, let me ask that we put up trial exhibit 2123-723 in evidence. And let me ask you to take a look at this, Doctor. It's an email from Kathy Beatty. Do you know who Ms. Beatty is?
Yes, I do.
And did you in fact make a request of Ms. Beatty to get together with the treatment team to talk about Maya's upcoming needs in December?
Sorry, I got my stuff in front of the screen. Yes, so I believe at that time I was in communication with the dependency attorneys, and there was a need to.
You can answer that question.
There was a need to present to the judge what options he could consider and choose from in terms of what the child's needs were, what the options might be for those kinds of treatments and things. and
Let's just stop.
Let's wait for the next question, Dr.
Yeah,
Silas.
let's,
Maybe approach on that.
Of course, another sidebar. How about that? I want to thank you, Grandma, for being here with me, like always. So I'm going to keep an eye on the shooter. Sidebar. You should type that in every time. Sidebar. Then we can count later. Good idea. Where's Maya?
Sustained. Members of the jury, you're going to disregard the answer that Dr. Smith was just giving. Mr. Hunter will ask a different question.
let me ask a kind of a bottom line question here first.
Hold on, can I see the attorneys again?
Sidebar. Sidebar. So what happened in the trial today? Sidebar. Sidebar. Yes, Grandma. I am so tired, but I could go back to sleep. And they still haven't caught the guy. That's got to be frightening to those people. However, in my opinion, he's going to off himself. See, the evil legal kidnapper here, I think she's a narcissist. She's always right. What she does is right. Oh my God, I know. It's ridiculous. This case has been going on for a long time.
You may continue, Mr. Hunter.
Hey, please go ahead. Thank you, Your Honor. Going back to this exhibit, had you asked to meet with the treatment team at this point?
No, I was making that request in my role as the medical director for the child protection team to assist with that side of the situation.
Okay. Were you a member of the treatment team?
No, and I didn't attend this meeting.
Oh, so you wound up not attending this meeting?
It wasn't for me to be there. It was for them to have the discussion.
Ah. And you wanted to know what their consensus was. Well, I mean, strike that, never mind.
Dr. Sally, I'm
Did
going to
there
make a
come
video
point
about you.
at which you became aware of any pictures or videos being taken of Maya?
Yes.
And tell us in general how that came about.
I'm not sure from the standpoint of the treating team at the hospital. From my standpoint, that was related to attempting to have some photo documentation as part of my evaluation and that could be available as part of the investigation.
Was it your understanding, well, did you have any understanding of whether the treatment team desired any such pictures for clinical reasons?
I believe so, but what I can speak to is what I was doing or my role with it, and my role was related to this attempt for some, in this case, video documentation for the purposes of the investigation.
So was there ever any point during this patient's entire hospitalization at which you were part of the treatment of the team rendering clinical care to Maya Kowalski?
No,
And did you ever hold yourself out as such
no,
to the parents?
no.
That's all I have for now, Your Honor.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. She don't look happy now.
Dr. Smith, how many times have you testified in court?
Probably over 300.
And
Holy
how often
crap.
have you met with defense counsel?
That's crazy.
Well, pretty often, because usually there's a deposition in cases where I'm testifying. Oh, this one? 0.
You did not meet with Mr. Hunter
I did not.
yesterday? Did you have phone conversations with him
I did not.
and not an email?
No,
In the week before, did you?
no.
How did you know to come here today?
Because my attorney from Suncoast Center's insurance company told me to.
Are you still doing what you were doing in 2016 to this day?
I'm a pediatrician. I resigned from the child protection team last July.
You wear several hats, Fifth Avenue Pediatrics, private pediatric practice, right?
Yes,
And then back in 2016, you were more or less director of the Johns Hopkins Child Abuse Team, right?
they don't have a team. They had residents that came to our clinic to learn about child abuse pediatrics once or twice during their second year of training. And I was the designated director for that rotation for them. And if we had maybe 5 or so over the 20 years I was the medical director, residents who came and worked with us for a month. So I would be the person that would be supervising them for those rotations.
All right, so you're in charge of the residency and
For
so
those things.
and so you were considered at this point by Dr. Tepa Sanchez as the go-to person for Johns Hopkins insofar as have you ever heard that you were referred to as a go-to by the doctors there?
Well, they wouldn't be saying that to me, so I'd have to say no. I don't know what they say amongst themselves.
Okay. Now you said though that you weren't a part of the treatment team. Did I understand your testimony?
I was not.
Here?
Correct.
We bring up exhibit 1002-0005. Next to last paragraph, bottom sentence.
He's going to get caught in lies.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I see at the very top,
The last,
barely see the discharge summary note. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Now, you weren't and didn't have any training in psychiatry, right?
Just rotations in medical school and residency.
You were not a pediatric psychiatrist.
Certainly not.
You were not a pain specialist.
No.
You were not an anesthesiologist.
No.
You were not involved in rehabilitation medicine.
No.
but you were included nonetheless in this treatment team, were you not?
No.
Let's go to 002-0006. And let's look at the bottom paragraph, third line. I think it's the last of the second and top and the third sentence. Nope. No, above. No. This is at 0006, and I'm looking for the. All right. So Dr. Sally Smith was heavily involved in her care. Is that true?
As the medical director for the child protection team in a complex medical child abuse case, yes, that's correct.
Well, you were involved in considerably more than that, were you not?
Not in any type of day-to-day treatment of the child, but certainly in a role coordinating some of the elements related to the investigation in the court case.
Well, getting Maya Kowalski off of all of her medications is not part of your job with CPT, is it?
Well, so
Is
that
it or
was,
isn't it? Yes or no?
Excuse me, Your Honor. Could you put the answer to the question?
As soon as she says yes or no to whether it was or was not part of her
Why
job.
don't you answer the specific question? If you need to explain, you can start explaining.
I'm sorry, could you just state the question again one time?
Sure. Well, deciding what medications Maya Kowalski should be on or whether to take her off of medications was not part of your job description at child protection, is it? Or was it?
The
Is that
part
yes
about,
or no?
yes, but I have to explain.
Yes, it's part of your job to do that, to manage Maya Kowalski's medications.
May I explain?
Well, yes.
So the part that was part of the question was related to taking her off medications. In cases of medical child abuse, one of the things that is important to try to do in a controlled setting like a hospital is if a child is on medications that may not be necessary, that the treatment team would consider to wean those medications in that controlled setting.
All right, so were you part of the treatment team or not?
I guess it's sort of threading the needle. I wasn't writing any orders. I didn't tell them which medications to stop or wean or anything like that. But as part of the whole evaluation of medical child abuse, there's a component of what happens when they aren't getting all these medications. And so that specific little part of it was within my role.
Exhibit 2116, please. Now, you just told them to get her off as many medications as possible. Down, number 15, next to last from the bottom. I think there's a misspelling there, but we can agree.
I believe the legal
Is
term
that
is
a text from you? To
Yes, it
Paula
is.
Dees?
Yes, it is.
The Paula Dees that testified, well, you wouldn't know. Probably already, but is that as many meds? It just says meds here, but it's supposed to be meds as possible?
Yes, and her reply is the last one's going off today.
Okay. So were you or were you not advising the treatment team as part of the treatment team to take Maya Kowalski off of all of these medications?
I was assisting them from the standpoint of the medical child protection team, medical child abuse realm. And as the reply makes it clear, they were already doing it and I didn't even know they were. So certainly wasn't directing that process.
You didn't know what they were. Weren't you involved in Maya Kowalski's lab results as well?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Exhibit 1001-0317. On November 15th, 2016, with Dr. Pagan as part of the child protection, the treatment team. Did he consult with you about an extensive chart review and recommendations?
So again,
I'm just asking whether he did or didn't.
well, clearly, I believe I had some discussion with Dr. Carroll, who this is, she's one of the hospitalists. And so that's her note. So clearly we had some discussion about documenting that certain lab tests presumably were now normal that had been abnormal. But I didn't order the tests or anything like that.
Are you saying that where it says in a progress note in the Johns Hopkins records, which you say you have access to, right?
Yes,
It says that the treatment team leader spoke at length with Dr. Sally Smith, you, right?
yes,
That you had done an extensive chart review, right?
yes.
And you were making recommendations regarding lab tests, right?
I was from the
And-
standpoint,
And you were making observations of whether they were abnormal. Is that right?
I knew she had abnormal tests that I had seen in all these medical records that I reviewed. But I don't, I mean, I'd have to look up and see. I don't really recall if these lab tests done in mid-November had any abnormalities.
A CBC, a CMP, a UA, a lipid panel ordered. Lipid panel is to check her cholesterol level, is it not?
Right, at one time hers was 363, I believe, quite elevated at various points.
So now you're in charge of her cholesterol as well? Is that right?
The lab tests had certain abnormalities that, based on my record review, I suspected were related to medications and potential toxicity. And so in evaluating the medical child abuse, one of the things we're trying to assess is if harm has been done, and hopefully it's reversible. So that was the thought process, the mindset that I was approaching this discussion with Dr. Carroll.
You're not a pharmacologist, are you?
I'm not.
Also, an IG profile. What's an IG profile?
Immunoglobulin.
Uh-huh. And an IgE? What is
So that's a specific one of the immunoglobulins. There are A, G, M, and E.
And a RAST test, check and see if she had allergies?
Correct. That was one of the things in the medical records that was said to cause some of her symptoms.
Are you an endocrinologist or an allergy expert?
I see a lot of children with endocrinological and allergy problems in my general practice, and I saw a lot of them in my role at All Children's for 12 years, but I have neither board certified specialty.
You don't have a specialty in either one of those, do you?
I just said that, right?
And you were worried about her dog dander allergy, right?
Yes.
And dog dander allergy is clearly part of Munchausen by proxy, right?
It is.
You know, your report?
Yes.
Sidebar. Sidebar. Put it in chat. Sidebar. We missed the other ones. That's okay though. Grandma, if you hear anything about the shooter, let me know so I can go there. I'm looking, checking, I should say. Oh, look at her. You can't look at the jury. Huh? Bitch. Sidebar.
May I continue?
No, I was just sustaining that objection.
All right. And on December 13th, 2016, I realize you might not recognize a lot of the dates, but to put it in context, by December 13th, 2016, now Maya had been at the hospital for what, 1, 2, almost 3 months? 2 months.
October
2 months.
17th to December 13th would be a little over 2 months, right?
Right. And you were still on the team, were you not?
I was still the medical director of the child protection team.
Well, you were part of the treatment team, were you not?
I was not.
1001-0200. Did you or did you not confer with the team regarding creating a behavior chart? Bottom last 2 sentences. Highlight, please.
So,
Did you or did you not become involved in creating a behavior chart for Maya Kowalski?
looking at this note, I think I misspoke earlier. The way that I didn't see any of these ahead of time. But the way the email was written, it was that they should meet, but it looks like I probably did actually attend that team meeting. And so it looks like these were the things that were discussed related to coming up with this list of things that would potentially help the court that was involved at the time.
You just said you hadn't seen these prior to this. Why would it be important for you to see all of these notes in the medical record prior to this, if all you're here to do is tell the truth about what you know?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
And then you had the pain team on documenting pain weekly. Is that right?
Well, I mean, it speaks for itself. These
Oh.
were the things that they said we talked about. I don't have an independent recollection of this specific meeting. And certainly I've been reviewing a lot of stuff the last couple of weeks, but I did not see this nor Kathy Beatty's email ahead of time. So, I'm just going by what I'm seeing right here at the moment.
Okay, so then you were involved in changing the room?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that's in reference to.
Was that changing the room to the 48-hour room, the surveillance room?
No, that was back in November. So
Were
I'm
you-
not,
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, I'm not sure what this is talking about.
Okay, so were you aware that during that 48 hours, Maya Kowalski was forced to urinate and defecate on herself because she could not get over to the commode?
Objection, argumentative, and facts unknown.
Overruled. She can answer.
No,
Were you part of the decision to put the commode just out of reach of her so that she could not get to it herself and had to
Absolutely
rely
not.
on a nurse?
absolutely not.
Were you part of any decisions to make sure that the nurses moved slowly so that she would be forced to have the decision of either urinating on herself or worse, or I guess calling and waiting?
No, I have no idea about that or what you're talking about.
Would that be child abuse?
I think that would be a stretch.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
All right, so, if we go back then, as you were talking about, that was in December. If we go back then into October, were you again part of the treatment team with Dr. Hart, Dr. Elliott, And Dr. D's,
No.
1001-0429, please. Right above the line there, please, and that right there. Now, please take a look at it, read it if you can.
Yes, I have.
All right. And here, Dr. Dees states that she spoke to you along with Dr. Hart and Dr. Elliott. Do you see that?
Yes, I'm pretty sure this is in reference to a meeting that we had on this, I think it was that day on October 18th. One of the things that's recommended in evaluating medical child abuse is to meet with the treating physicians and discuss what their observations are and everything so that I can then convey that in my report that I wasn't just sort of like out there rogue making this diagnosis, that there were other physicians with some of these other areas of expertise that I had discussed the case with and had the opportunity to hear their expert opinions. So Dr. Hart was the rehab physician, Dr. Elliott was the anesthesiologist, and Dr. Deese looks like would have been the hospitalist that was the general pediatrician taking care of her at that time. So that was the purpose of that meeting.
Well, it says here that the purpose, the first one was continue with the current plan, right?
I don't think that's what it says. I think those are two separate things.
All right. Well, wouldn't a treatment team be the team deciding about keeping with the current plan?
Yes, and I think that's what Dr. Deese was referencing. So this is her brief note at the end of the pediatric residence note, and they will put in a few sentences, sometimes more. And so I think there are three separate sentences here where two separate sentences that she added to, convey what her plan was for that day as the attending physician.
All right, I was just simply asking you whether you were part here of a note in which the current plan described there was discussed.
I understand, I think, what you were asking, and I'm answering the question to the best of my ability.
Okay. You're aware that on October 8th of 2016, there was no active state investigation of the Kowalskis.
Not sure exactly when the report was made, but I think at least part of the day on the 8th, that is correct. It was either late that day or the following morning. I found out about the case the following morning. So the 9th. Yes.
So what were you doing accessing Maya Kowalski's private confidential medical records on the 8th if you were just part of the child protection team and there was no investigation?
I was doing so under HIPAA's what's called TPO exception to the confidentiality guidelines, which allows for
Objection, move to strike for legal conclusion as to what the statute says.
Sidebar. Of course. She's lying. She's tiptoeing around. Sometimes you can tell she was thinking. Sidebar. So this is what I want to do today. I want want to do her testimony. I want to stay up to date with the shooter. And what else today? I've seen that. Yep. Hey, Sally. So 300 of those kids, how many were taken from their family and never given back? 300, Sally, you said 300. Do you have kids, Sally? Grandkids? How would you feel? Just saying. I know she ain't going to listen, Grandma, but, you know, I'm saying what's on my mind. All these people, they're sick. It's like a sickness with them, like a power thing. And this, there's been so many times. They have been sued so many times. You know? 300 kids reported abuse out of her mouth. 300. Yes, they did. Yep, I agree. And they did not like parents that were involved in her treatment, and they should be, because let me tell you something. Okay, my situation ain't like this. However, when my mom is sick and she got cancer, you know what they did? They went through everything with me. They talked to me before anything. They would ask my opinion, how I felt about things, how would I want to go with the treatment plan for her. I mean, I even looked at the X-rays. I seen her cancer, where it was, and they took my suggestions. The cancer doctors. I know it ain't this kind of situation, but I'm just giving a point on how good doctors are. And that video I got of her at John Hopkins doing a little, seminar or whatever, I don't see a badge on her thing. I could be wrong, though. That's what I mean. How many never got their kids back? It's horrible.
I'm going to sustain the objection, Mr. Anderson. You can re-ask the question, and we'll get to a break in just a couple minutes. Mr. Anderson, within 5 minutes, we need to take a break.
So true or false, you accessed Maya Kowalski's medical records on the 8th.
I did.
Prior to that, you did not contact Jack or Beata Kowalski. True or false?
Correct.
Is it not true that you often walk in after?
Mr. Anderson, if you're going to a different,
I am.
then why don't we take the break now? Members of the jury, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do the investigation and receive more information. Let's try to keep it to a 10-minute break. All rise.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. However, I want to say about this judge, sometimes I like him, sometimes I don't, but he seems kind of biased at times against Maya's team, in my opinion. And they did really good research. They're finding their lies.
Jury's out of our presence. Sorry about that, Mr. Anderson. The court deputy was telling me one of the jurors needed a break. So,
Yeah, I saw it. Good catch.
Dr. Sally Smith, you're in the middle of your testimony, so you're not allowed to talk to
Sure, I'm aware.
either side. 10 minutes. Let's keep this no more than 10 minutes.
Yes, sir.
All rise.
She was talking to the other side. What? The judge is seeing crap but it's guarded. I don't know, we're not there, but he said something to Dr. Sally. Oh, I'm telling you. He didn't even say how long it's going to be. Let me see what's going on with the shooter. Hold on. Update. Come on, I want to update. They were looking for an update, you guys. Let's see. Let's look at the latest. This was 14 minutes ago. Okay, let's go to the 14 minutes ago. You know what? Hold on. Did we miss the press conference? What? This was 6 minutes ago. 18 people killed in Maine shooting, governor says. Look at. Unreal. Look at. Okay, I'm not happy now. Hold on. I know you told me, but I thought you said you would let me know when, and you said Fox, and you didn't know the time though. Oh well, we'll find it. How long is it? Oh, all right. All right.
Sending something out later that has that information in it if you weren't able to grab that now. Again, this is a very fluid situation. We have a lot of resources, as Chief St. Pierre had mentioned earlier, that are on the ground in a coordinated effort to apprehend this individual. We've notified the Department of Education, and they have determined what they're going to do with the schools. A lot of schools, area schools, were shut down today based on our conversation with them. Again, as more information comes in, we'll be providing it to you. Thank you for your time. This is a very difficult time for, I think, the community of Lewiston, difficult time for obviously the victims' families. And it's a tough time for law enforcement. It was a rough night last night, but we're committed to bringing whoever's responsible to justice. And again, we are currently looking for Mr. Card right now, someone that we'd like to apprehend. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. And FBI Special Agent in Charge, Cohen, if you could join me, please.
Thank you. My name is Jody Cohen. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of FBI Boston Division, which covers the state of Maine. Our hearts go out to everyone who is impacted as a result of this senseless violence. The FBI is working hand in hand with our law enforcement partners. Our evidence response team is here processing these very extensive scenes. We are providing investigative and tactical support, as well as our victim specialists are working with those affected by this tragedy. As this very active investigations continues to unfold, we're asking the public to stay vigilant and come forward with any information that you might have that you feel is helpful to our investigators. My pledge is that the FBI will carry out this investigative case with rigor. We will work day and night alongside our law enforcement partners to get the answers to the questions this community deserves. We thank the public for your continued cooperation and patience as we continue to work this very active investigation. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And I would say that the reality here from a resource standpoint is that when we've asked for anything, the answer's been yes, period. Tactical teams, evidence response teams, full-blown investigative units, detective units that have come from multiple states, whether it's the commissioners from Vermont and New Hampshire reaching out to me directly, Massachusetts saying, what do you need, Mike? What can we do for the state of Maine? So we are now prepared to try to take a few questions. And keep in mind, again, that we may not be able to answer as in-depth as you would like, and we don't plan on taking a great deal of questions. I think follow-up press events will allow for that. Sir?
So no one has really talked about the weapon that was used here, the AR style, so someone can talk about that. But the other thing here is there are reports that this individual had mental health issues, that he made threats to shoot up the National Guard. So clearly there were some signs here that he was on someone's radar. The question becomes, why was he in possession of this weapon? And certainly, why wasn't he stopped sooner?
Yeah, I think those are all valid questions, and certainly questions that we are looking into now, but not questions that we can answer today. Considering that this occurred last night, there's still an active search for the suspect in question. So I appreciate those questions, but not something we're going to be able to answer right now.
Is it something that you're investigating and looking
It is certainly one of those things that we want to follow up on, all aspects of that.
Why do you feel
Go ahead, right here. Yes.
give us a sense of the ages of who has died, how many are under 18 and how many are over 18?
I'm not sure we have that information with us today. We wanted to break it down by gender because that's something we had readily available. We did not break this down into age ranges at all.
So what can you tell us? What can you tell us about the background of the suspect in this case, or I should say the person of interest, because I noticed the language is very clear. You're saying person of interest, not suspect. So why use that terminology, and what can you tell us about his background?
Yeah, I think we used person of interest last night for half of the room that was here for that press event. As the Colonel had mentioned, there is now arrest warrants for murder for this particular individual, Mr. Card. So he is viewed as a suspect, and there is a full court press by all of our partners to bring him into custody. What was the second piece of that question?
What can you tell us about his background? Someone had asked a second ago about the idea that he had voiced concerns about his own mental health, right? Had been committed, according to language in police bulletin, to a mental health facility for weeks. How could someone that fits that profile still be in possession of semi-automatic weapons?
Well, I do think that the statutes around firearms and the possession of those are pretty complex. I know that we will be reviewing that information as we move forward, but that's not an answer that we're prepared to give today, because that leads to motive. You're talking about behavioral health issues and how that impacts this situation. I would expect you'll hear back from us on that in the future. Right here, sir.
Yeah, I've got a question about, we've seen helicopters as far north as but can you tell us anything about what's leading you, that far north of the scene where you come from?
Yeah, sure. So we have law enforcement assets that are deployed over a number of communities doing follow-ups on a number of different things. So as you can imagine, there's a great deal of search warrants that we're following up on. We do have partners, that helicopters from the New Hampshire State Police. That copter was here last night to assist us as well. So whether we have tactical elements out or we're searching an area, some of those air assets would be very, very valuable for us. So that's what they're doing.
That's leading you there.
We're not going to speak to what brings us to a specific community one way or the other. Yes, ma'am. Right here.
Identifying the unidentified victims. What are people encouraged to do? Is there DNA being, tested from family members who may have missing loved ones? Like, what's that approach right now?
Yeah, so we did have a family a reunification center open last night. We do have behavioral health liaisons that are fully engaged to work with families and work with loved ones and work with victims, for that matter, that may be in the hospital and seeking treatment. So those things are actively occurring. We are dealing with each one of those situations separately. So do we need DNA on that? Are we just waiting to find a loved one, some kind of family member that we can make a notification? I think that varies across the board. I'm going to take two more questions. I'm going to take two more. Right here.
Yes, if there's some sort of triggering event, is that something
I think we're always concerned around motive. That you say triggering event, that's a motive for us. Again, that's not something we're prepared to discuss today, but I do appreciate the question. It's clearly something that's important. One additional follow-up from you.
Can you help us understand why these locations, why the school in that? Looking for something.
More question right here, sir. Right here.
You say is clarify, with the arrest warrants issued today, and can you say his card is still in safe or he's still alive?
Well, we're actively searching for him. If this would be a different press conference, I would assume. So we don't know his location, and I'll leave it at that. And we are working with the Attorney General's office reference to those murders. And so with that in mind, we're done taking questions for now. So we are going to actually take off at this point. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody.
Have there been any credible sightings? I mean, we've not really gotten many answers.
All right, so that is the end of that news conference. As you are taking a look over in Lisbon, Maine right now, one of the many communities where search efforts are underway for now considered a suspect here. Want to go over the latest.
All right, hold on. Something's being funny in StreamYard, you guys. Hold on. They're back from break. Hold on. All right.
Just give another minute or two.
What are you digging for, Sally?
Yeah, I wanted to ask the clerk if, while the jury's out, could we?
Well, Mr. Hunter's not here.
Yes, sir.
Do you, is this a conversation that we need Mr. Hunter for?
Yeah, I only wanted to mark what the doctor brought in.
Why don't we wait for Mr. Hunter at that?
Yes, sir.
And speaking of Mr. Hunter.
Wow.
Let me ask the lawyers this.
We can't hear nothing.
References to Dr. Carroll, Leslie Carroll. Do we need to say anything to the jury that Dr. Leslie Carroll and I have no relationship, or just leave it alone?
I think they're clueless about that. It's up to you, Judge. I mean, I don't.
I'm sorry. And as a reminder, my brother is a Dr. Carroll.
Yes.
And so.
It might be a good idea
I
to
think
say something just for that reason. Yeah, because they may have heard Dr. Carroll.
Okay.
I don't think it hurts.
So I'll just make that mention. Now, Mr. Anderson, there was another issue you wished to address with Mr. Hunter was here.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Judge. All I wanted to do was mark for identification what Dr. Smith brought in with her to testify with.
You mean all those notebooks?
Well, that's a good point. And of course, let's see what we're talking about here.
Okay, let's just talk practical. From
No,
the clerk's
they argue.
perspective. If Dr. Sally Smith has only looked at like 2 pages this whole time.
Yes, I see the court's.
I have no, I mean, you can mark that.
Yeah, I just think that the binder she has open right now is the only thing I would want. That's the only thing I've seen come out of it is this one binder that is before her right now.
Well, I don't think she's looked through the binder. I think she's only looked at the couple pages in her hand, so.
She looked at more during the sidebar.
With marking what she has looked at. But that should be it.
I always thought when they brought stuff to the stand, you could explore whatever they brought.
Well, if she's not looking at it, and it's just more or less a prop, if you will, at this point,
She shouldn't have it open.
5 or 6 5-inch notebooks having to be given to the clerk who already has so many notebooks.
She's got quite enough notebooks. Yes, that's what I was just suggesting. Only this one that she has got open right now and referred to. I have not been able to see how many pages, what she's referred to, but I do know that it appears to only be one notebook.
Dr. Smith, why don't you close the
Sure.
black notebook and only keep out what you've actually looked at, which is what's in your left hand. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
So as a reminder, if Dr. Smith is going to look at any of those items, then we'll probably mark that. But just to mark 5 binders, mark them off and not do that.
Understood.
I don't know if it's proper, but all of these are shared documents that are date stamped, except for a couple of folders with references. And as you have stated, I haven't touched them. So
And unless and until you have to look at them, let's not worry about it. Because I don't want to spend the time having the lawyers go through to check to make sure that there isn't a sheet of paper that isn't in evidence or not in evidence.
Right.
That would take forever. And
Okay, I'm on the main legislative website for statutes.
What she's got is her report material.
exactly. I didn't realize I wasn't going to need it.
And so I guess the moral of the story is unless you absolutely need to look at one of those items in your binder, let's not go there because then
You got it.
Okay, this is main information analysis center.
Tonnage to the number of
For
items.
people, I'm going to read
I don't really want to kill those trees.
Office here.
Are we ready to bring in the jury?
Mr. Hunter, are you ready for the jury? Let's bring them in.
Part of the person of interest regarding mass shooting incident. Okay, and there's Tim. Card is a trained firearms instructor believed to be in the Army Reserve. According to the flag law in Maine, Morgan, Michigan. I know, right? He's not being fair.
Members of the jury, I want to confirm while you're away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves. You did no investigation and received no information. Is that correct? Have you seen any media accounts since you were last with us? Has anyone approached you about this case since you were last with us? Mr. Anderson, you may continue. Oh, before I did it, there's been a couple of references to Dr. Leslie Carroll. Obviously, my last name is Carroll. There's no family relationship between Dr. Leslie Carroll and myself.
Subject to redirect, plaintiff yields to the jury's questions.
Well, it goes back to Mr. Hunter now.
Please go ahead. Counsel asked you about your access to the medical records when Dr. Tepa Sanchez called you.
Yes.
Was that as a result of your being asked to consult on a case by a fellow medical staff member?
Correct.
Is that customary, typical?
Yes, and
Objection, foundation, and predicate for that.
Well, the answer yes remains.
Your duties as the medical director of the Child Protection Team, the CPT, if we can.
Yes,
Usually that's the shorthand folks usually use.
that's the usual. Yes.
Okay. Is part of your, do you understand part of your statutory duties with the CPT to follow patients who are sheltered under a child abuse investigation?
My understanding of my responsibility is to provide whatever assistance is requested from the investigators, law enforcement, and attorneys that are involved in the case. So I think I'll leave it there.
Okay. And I think I better leave it there. Have we ever spoken?
I believe, I might be wrong, I believe you were at one of my 5 depositions, but other than that, I knew of you when I worked at the hospital, but otherwise, no, to my recollection, no.
Have we ever discussed
5?
this case?
No.
Wow.
You ever discussed this case with anyone from my office?
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Anderson, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury.
Boy, they were easy on her. I hope they have questions. Oh, yes, they do.
I think there's more coming. Given the number of questions, members of the jury, I'm just going to ask you to step out. Please do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do the investigation and receive no information.
All right, jurors exited.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. 5 depositions. I got to find them all. I'm going to be working on something about, or not about Kathy. Yes, Kathy. Oh my God, my neck is killing. Why do they do that? Oh my God. I'm telling you, Grandma. Okay, let me go look to see if there's any updates. Hold on. Here, let me get that. Sidebar. Can you imagine being there? I would fall asleep. I hope they have the tough questions for her. You know what? They already sued Dr. Sally, okay, Smith, whatever. They got 2.5, I think it's 2.5 million. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So yeah, I think after they ask these questions, I'm gonna go and try something else, a different live. I'd be sipping something like most, right? Okay. Yeah, because I want to cover that shooter along with the rest of the world. All right. So all I got to do today myself, I have to run to the store real quick. I got to get me some food because I'm going to try to eat. And then I think later on tonight, I'm going to have Doug, Teal's mom, Karen, on the panel talking about her son's murder. But I'm waiting for her to give me a time. But I know it's going to be later tonight, obviously. Like 9 o'clock. I'm not sure. So that'll be 3 times. 3 times I'm going to be going live. What's going on? Come on, people. Get it together. You know what bothers me about the judge? I don't pick on people's looks, okay, because it's not right. But I will say he needs to shave the top of his head, that little patch of hair. Don't you think? I wanna tell him, you need to shave that off. Those 10 lengths of hair, they can come off now. That would suck to be a guy and lose your hair. Oh, my mouth is on fire. Oh my God. Who's smirking? Sorry. How's the weather where you're at? It's icky and rainy. I don't think he's being fair right now. Nice. It's been raining here. Oh boy. Just a minute. I'm ripping a piece of paper. I know it's getting loud. Can you believe Halloween's just around the corner? Where is, oh my God. Where is my money? I ain't got no money. Money. Okay. And one of the chicken is reporting, bok, 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 someone laid an egg. I don't either. My building's secured. However, my grandkids are spoiled. They get tons of candy from me. It drives my daughter nuts because I get pounds of candy. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Oops. I have to mail my, oh yeah. They don't live by you. Kids like money. Oh yeah, they could get a bag of candy for that. Because that's what I do. Each kid gets a bag of candy. Why can't we hear them? That's not fair. I wonder when this trial is going to be over. Because they're going to have to even do closing statements yet. I'm trying to figure out something to eat tonight. Today would be a good day to make chili, though. Maybe I'll do that. Do you like chili, Grandma? Ooh. Yummy. I bet that was good. Yeah, chili's good, but only in the fall and winter. Oh my gosh. Oh, hold on. Let me go look. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Oh my God. Okay, I only like shrimp. That's it. And I like popcorn shrimp and um, the shrimp that you dip in that, what is that? Sweet sauce that you dip it in? Coconut? Coconut shrimp. And I pretty much love anything with pasta. Oh yeah, cocktail sauce with fried shrimp. Yeah, that's good. Uh-oh, someone's talking. Hold on.
Doing the triage role yourself.
We received the patients as they came to us.
What was the number of people on duty at the hospital last night? How did that correspond to normal staffing levels?
We had our normal staffing available last night, and as I mentioned when I referenced the ballooning, we had team members. We had approximately 100 team members who were off duty come into the hospital to help ensure that we were able to care for not only the patients that we received from these horrible scene, but also take care of the patients that we had there.
Doctor, from a law enforcement perspective, we're seeing sheriff's deputies and police officers from other jurisdictions come here to help out. Is it similar when it comes to healthcare? Are you seeing doctors and nurses from other towns and areas come lend a hand? And if so, is that something that is helpful and that you'd like to see happen?
Certainly in the short term, there is an outpouring of assistance that's being offered. And you don't know what resources you need or don't need. So it is helpful. We were able to organize those resources and use them effectively. As an example, we had ambulance services from other counties coming on site. At one point, we had approximately 10 ambulance crews standing by outside of our trauma center to ensure that if we had patients who needed to be transferred, they could be transferred. We received nurses and physicians from some of our area hospitals. We had helicopter support, not only from our own Life Flight of Maine, but also from Boston Med Flight and from Dartmouth. So the long answer to that, or the short answer is yes.
And then, Doctor, what about the lockdown? Obviously, there was a large police presence outside of the hospital this morning. How long do you anticipate that to be in effect, and why exactly do you need armed personnel outside the hospital at this time?
So we're taking the lead from law enforcement, and they're the ones who are telling us what we need to do and how we need to do it. As long as the city is in, what's the term that they use? Shelter in place. As long as we're in a shelter in place, then we will continue to remain in our current status.
This kind of event happens a lot in America. A lot of hospitals like yours have to deal with situations like this. Do you have a professional opinion about the fact that this is part of what the American medical community regularly has to respond to?
It's a good question. I don't know that I have a professional opinion about having to respond to this. I would just say that it's a tragedy, and I think we should do our best to respect the families, those people who have been impacted, the caregivers. I'll just add one thing, just talking about that. We do have an incredible amount of support for people who are going through a difficult time right now, mental health issues, any kind of, stress or anxiety from not only the events that have happened, but having to witness some of it. And so we're continuing to provide those resources, and much to the question asked earlier about other areas and other neighboring towns or communities, we've received a lot of support from neighboring towns, communities, and agencies from around the state in order to offer support not only to the patients and families that we have, but also to our team members.
Last question?
Is there a call to action at all for blood drive? I know people want to know if they can help out.
We for right now, we and I believe the other trauma centers in the state are very adequately supplied with blood and other supplies. I think the one thing that I would ask for people who are at home right now is if you're in an area where you're being asked to shelter in place, please do so and stay safe.
Can we get back to one point from earlier? Can you, the amount of time that elapsed from when you first got notified, the first patient arrived, till the last one, and obviously some admitted, some not.
Sure. Yeah, that time frame was approximately 45 minutes, and we received 14 patients, critically ill patients at that time, over 45 minutes. So that happened very quickly, and our teams responded exceptionally well.
Thank you all. We'll keep you posted. State police will have information as soon as they can. I appreciate your patience.
All right, so that was a news conference.
And here they still are standing there. Wow. Look at that one guy in the back. He's mad. So that would be the defense. I think. I could be wrong. Okay, let me find something here. What is this? Oh, look at this.
Yay, JJ! Yay, you're doing it!
Hold on. Good. Good. Sit there. Hold
Ready?
on.
Hold
Sit
on.
on there. Now hold on with your hands. That way you can stay on.
You know who that was? That was JJ and Lori Vallow.
They call me a god. 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 Let's go.
I'm about to go off like a weapon. Fuel to the top, got a filled up engine. In my thoughts, obsession. I will not stop, no, I'm never second guessing. I got a God complex. Haters love to hate, but I never feel pressed. Got a lot on my plate, but I never get stressed.
How about that video I made a long time ago?
Hi, bitch. Hi, bitch. Hi, bitch. Hi, bitch.
Okay, let's look at that. Let's look at that. I love doing Lori. She is my alter ego. I got one coming up. I haven't done it yet, though. Yep. You know, she got, she's going to be extradited to Arizona by the end of the year, by December. I just found that out last night. I would love to meet her. They didn't say when, but I showed the court documents last night. I made a video. And I think Chad's trial don't start until January. Why did that stop? Oh, shit. That's funny. I know, right? Wouldn't that be something? Oh my God. Stupid headache. See what's going on here. Nothing. Nothing. Oh my God, finally? Here we go. Okay. What I do, and you see, people don't realize that. I learned how to mock these people, okay? I put my own little twist on it, though. I've been doing it for what, a year and a half. What's, oh yeah, Maya's dad. Of course, we don't know what's going on. The defense is probably pouting about something. Here we go.
Okay, Dr. The presence of the jury on. Okay. Have you had a conversation with a nurse, Bonnie Rice from Tampa General Hospital?
Back in the time of this case, yes.
When was that conversation, to the best of your recollection?
Um,
And a month and a year is fine.
Oh.
Purpose of this question.
I would say October into November, late October, early November 2016.
Was there any conversations, to the best of your recollection, between you and Bonnie Rice in calendar year 2015 about Maya Kowalski?
No.
Okay. I'm going to ask you those two questions first, and then I'm going to ask you the rest of the jury questions.
Okay.
Let's bring in the jury.
Yes.
Here we go.
Okay, please be seated, members of the jury. I want to confirm while you're away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves. You did no investigation and received no information. Is that all correct?
Correct.
That you haven't seen any media reports of this case. Is that correct?
Correct.
No one approached you. Is that correct? Outside of Dr. Smith's presence, I went through the jury's questions. I'm going to be able to ask a good number of them, but not all of them. Okay. Dr. Smith, have you had a conversation with a nurse, Bonnie Rice, from Tampa General Hospital in connection with Maya Kowalski?
She's a nurse practitioner, but yes.
When approximately was that conversation?
I'm pretty sure it was in late October, early November of 2016.
Have you had any conversations with nurse practitioner Rice in calendar year 2015 with respect to Maya Kowalski?
No.
Next question. Do you know why it is the hospital's policy to contact you first instead of reporting the suspected abuse to the child abuse hotline?
It's an unusual situation, and because of the way that the whole system is set up in Florida and they have to file a report for me to do a medical evaluation, sometimes they're not sure what to do. And so in those occasional situations, I'm going to say once or twice a year, a doctor from All Children's would call me to ask me a question about the case that they were involved in and request my expertise related to the child abuse and neglect question that they had.
Correct me if I am wrong. There is no harm in contacting the hotline prior to contacting an expert first.
I'm sorry, can you?
Sure. Correct me if I am wrong. There is no harm in contacting the hotline prior to contacting an expert first.
The only situation would be if there potentially wasn't really enough evidence or whatever to justify a report. So otherwise, no, I mean, typically the report gets made before I, as an expert, would be involved, almost all the time.
How would CPT normally access the medical records?
So I always would access them through my remote access that's granted as a member of the active medical staff. If it was a child protection team, say from Sarasota County, that the person didn't have privileges at All Children's, then what they would have to do would be to, submit a request for the records to the hospital to obtain those records.
Does the county child protection team have access to medical records normally without privileges?
Only because, well, not like I do with it's an electronic access. Another team or somebody besides me would have to make that request. And there's statutory language that requires the hospital to provide those records in the furtherance of the investigation. So they can get them, but they can't just log in and see them as easily as I can.
Are the physicians that are part of the child protection team required to have privileges at a hospital to provide a medical assessment?
I'm pretty sure that is correct. So mine's easy because they're just the one hospital. Other teams, like say, for example, in Miami, I think the medical director probably has to have privileges at Jackson Memorial and Miami Children's in order to go in and see the child. But I'm honestly not sure because it's not my situation. So I don't know exactly what the rule is with that. I think probably they have to have privileges, but I'm not sure.
So if yes, do the privileges grant access to the patient's medical records?
Yes. So as part of our credentialing, we get re-credentialed every 2 years. We have to do like certain, HIPAA training about medical records. There are rules about which ones you can and can't access. It's pretty closely watched and monitored. And so, I can do that in my role as the medical director of the child protection team. And on these occasional situations where they call me separately because they're not sure what to do and need child abuse pediatrician expertise, I can do it in that role as a member of the medical staff.
Is it standard for a child protection team physician to offer recommendation to a child's treating physician in a suspected child abuse case?
With regards to potentially certain tests or certain needs of the court, yes. So for example, if I'm seeing a child that has a bunch of injuries and they need a follow-up brain scan, I can make that recommendation to the team. Could you please do a brain scan on such and such date? And, typically they're going to do what I ask them to do in terms of that, because it's something I need for the purposes of the investigation and to assist all the various people involved to make a good decision in the case. So I think that answers probably.
Who made the referral to your child protection team for the evaluation?
The child protective investigator called our person called a case coordinator that was on call or was the designated person to receive what they call intakes. So when there's an investigation that's been initiated, particularly in a case like this where there's a major medical component, then the child protective investigator calls the child protection team, and one of these case coordinators, or we actually had a person that they called an intake coordinator, takes the information, kind of reviews everything. And then that person would contact me and say, Dr. Smith, we need you to go down and see such and such child at the hospital.
When you told Dr. Dees to get Maya off as many meds as possible, did you know that was already in progress prior to telling Dr. Dees to do so?
I did not.
Do you still have medical privileges at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Yes, I still have active medical staff privileges there.
Members of the jury, that is all the questions that I'm going to be able to ask. So, Mr. Hunter, you now have the floor, sir.
Morning again. Could I have trial exhibit 2408-1739 in evidence?
What's the number again? 2408.
I've got 2408, what is that?
What's the second number?
You take that down, please.
(2408-1739). Yes.
Okay, you lost me again. Wait a minute. This is a, for your edification, Doctor, this is an email from Beata Kowalski dated 12 October 2016. And I'm going to ask that you go to page 1739, the following page. And then the midway through the second full paragraph on that page, there's a indications Tuesday 10/11 evening, I had another supersized visit from MD Dr. Smith, who was sent by CPS to investigate this case. Would that have been about the time that you spoke with Mrs. Kowalski, the author of this email?
Yes, that's exactly what, and she says an hour and a half. So just like I said earlier, that was that evening that I came down and talked with her.
Okay. There was reference to the EEG video that was taken of this patient.
Yes.
Have you ever reviewed it?
I don't believe so. It's possible at the time I looked at a few minutes of it, but I don't think so.
Were you aware of any indication on that video of Maya Kowalski defecating or urinating upon herself?
I had no idea if that was true or not, frankly.
Did you ever hear any indication of that and
No.
suggestion of that in real time?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes, counsel. Yes, or make sure I'm asking the right question.
Well, that's disappointing. There's a bunch of questions that the jury didn't get to ask. She can't even look at the jury. Oh, sidebar. Sidebar. Holy cards are in the mail, ready to head out. Awesome. Hi, Anna. How you doing? Sidebar. Have you guys, okay, I love Mountain Dew. I got to have at least one Mountain Dew a day. Have you tried the one that's real sugar? Oh boy. That's good. I'm okay. I'm still sick. It goes up and down throughout the day. I don't know. It's weird. I'm doing great. The weather's great. The weather just sucks here where I am. Oh God, I got one Mountain Dew a day. You know what? Back in the day, I used to easily a case of pop a week. Horrible, huh? Pop is outrageous ever since COVID. I can tell you that much. Used to be like seven something a case, and now it's 14. Come on now. I hate water, but I drink it. Not like I should, though. Who could drink 8 gallons of water a day? Is that what they said? Is it 8 gallons? I don't know. I don't know. Oh. gotta check something. I love when you impersonate her. Oh, yes. Oh, 8. Okay. Listen to me. 8 gallons of water a day. Yes, a lot of people don't understand unless they know who I am of what I'm doing. It's funny, some of the comments I get, I don't understand what you're doing. It's a Lori Vallow skit. Like if she was in court, then I would proceed to act like her when she was in court. You know what I mean? You just had to be following to get it. Orange Blast. Never heard of it. I know my daughter's got a lot of those powder things that you put in water. Oh boy. Hi Nala. Hi sweet girl. You know what? I wonder how many hours they have wasted with sidebars, you guys. For real. Oh, really? I'll have to look when I go to the store to get some meat. I still haven't figured out what I want to eat.
So no questions?
Yeah.
And Mr. Hunter, do you have any questions?
No, sir, Your Honor.
Do the jury have any further questions? Seeing none. Okay, members of the jury, I'm going to ask that you be back at 1:45, so just a couple extra minutes beyond our normal lunchtime. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation and receive no information. See you at 1:45.
All rise. Jury's exited.
What the heck? Now what's going on? Are they done with her? Roast beef. Hey, you guys.
The jury's out of our presence. Dr. Smith, there's a couple things we needed to do before we were able to break for lunch. So, Mr. Hunter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Swear on justice of clean copies of the reports here.
We're doing the proffer, just so you understand.
Okay.
Oh, Madam Court Reporter, if you could mark this transcript as the proffer.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Smith, this is a proffer for a potential appellate record. And what I'm going to do is ask you some kind of conclusory questions and some summary questions to avoid you're having to sit here for a long afternoon and all of us the same way.
Okay.
in the process of your investigation of the Maya Kowalski case after it was referred to you, did you conduct an investigation? Did you gather some medical records?
I did a medical evaluation, including gathering a lot of medical records. Yes.
Okay. And did you, in fact, promulgate 2 different reports
Yes.
regarding that? One was a preliminary report in October of 2016.
October 13th. Correct.
Okay. And the other was one signed December 2nd, 2016.
Correct.
Do those reports both indicate the results of your investigation and review to that date?
Yes.
Okay. And in connection with your report and your investigation, did you obtain certain medical records regarding Maya Kowalski?
Yes.
And does the report you signed December 2nd, 2016, fairly and accurately reflect the records that you gathered and then reviewed for your report?
Up until that time, yes.
Okay. And then were there subsequent records you reviewed after that, after you received after that date?
Yes.
Okay. And does your report first of October, I think you said 13th, 2016?
Correct. Yes.
Does it fairly and accurately reflect your conclusions up to that date?
Yes.
Okay. And that would, if we were to walk through that report and what it was based upon, would your indication be that it contained and fairly reflected the outcome and your conclusions of your investigation up to October 13th, 2016?
Yes.
And would it also reflect what you advise up to the conclusions and facts of which you advised the court, the dependency court, as of that date?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what we're going to mark as whatever the court clerk tells me we're going to mark it as.
What's the next in the series for the defendants?
3328. For ID?
For ID, it's not coming into evidence.
Correct. This is 3328 for identification. Let me just ask you, is that a true and correct copy of your report of October 13th, 2016?
Yes.
Can you hand that to me? Are you finished with it, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Hunter? Madam Clerk, it's 2-sided, so just be careful.
And then after you rendered that report of 2006, these are new lips, I'm sorry, October 13th, 2016, after you rendered that report, did you continue an investigation as reflected in the report that you signed on December 2nd, 2016?
I continued my medical evaluation up to that point in December and gathered lots of additional records beyond what I had on October 13th. Yes.
Okay. And I have a badly marked up copy of what I'm going to ask be marked for identification as defense exhibit.
Well, is there already a specific exhibit number on that? Down at the bottom, Mr. Hunter, the first page, look at the first page.
Or the December or the October?
December.
The December is 3045, 1 through 46.
The answer to your question, my copy doesn't, but I trust Mr.
Mr. Hughes, will you say that the clerk know what defense numbers are the 2 reports that have been previously marked?
So the first report is in October 13, 2016, preliminary report, and it is defense exhibit number 3044. The
For
December,
ID, it's not in, it's just ID.
just for identification purposes. For identification purposes, Sally Smith's December 5th, 2016 report is defense exhibits number 3045, and that's pages 1 through 46, and it's currently being printed.
Or can't we just put the first
That's,
page
that's
up
fine.
if you want?
That's fine. I apologize for that.
No, no worries. Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
And to the clerk for attempting to gum up the works one more time. Does your December 2nd, 2016 report, Defense Exhibit 3045. Does it also reflect your opinions and conclusions as of that date regarding your investigation?
Regarding my medical evaluation, yes.
Okay. And just if you would briefly tell the court what your opinions were regarding this matter as reflected in that report.
As reflected in that report, it was my conclusion that there was what we call positive findings for medical child abuse, and that the medical record review and the history taking and that kind of thing that I had reviewed provided very strong evidence to support that conclusion.
Okay. Was there any conclusion, and is that the conclusion of medical child abuse would colloquially be known as Munchausen by proxy?
Yes, and I believe it's even in the what we call the impression. That was my conclusion in the report. I put in parentheses Munchausen syndrome by proxy because that's kind of a well-known term for this situation.
Okay. And did you reach any conclusion regarding conversion disorder?
Yes.
And what was that?
It was my opinion based on all of the observations of the various medical staff and team and staff members, et cetera, as well as based on multiple other physicians' reports that I had reviewed that she had a conversion disorder. It's actually called a functional neurological disorder now, but at that time it was called a conversion disorder.
When we say she, you refer to Maya Kowalski?
Maya Kowalski, yes.
In reaching the conclusions and opinions you just expressed to us, how many pages of medical records did you review?
I don't know exactly as I sit here, but well over 2,000.
Okay. And I see you brought with you today a stack of 3, 4, and 5-inch binders that is on the table in front of you. Are those at least some of the records you reviewed?
Those are all of the medical records that I printed. So there were some that I reviewed in the electronic medical record from Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital that I don't have copies of. But everything that I had a copy of in terms of all her medical records going back to actually her, first visit to the pediatrician up in Chicago is in those binders.
Okay. And did the material you reviewed also include certain online WordPress blogs that had been created by Beata Kowalski?
Yes.
I believe that's all I have, Your Honor.
Mr. Anderson, do you have anything in proffer?
Dr. Smith, before, or let's say, right at the start of this, in the first part of October, you had a call with Dr. Kirkpatrick, did you not?
I did.
And Dr. Kirkpatrick explained to you that he had been treating Maya Kowalski for CRPS, correct?
He did.
And he told you that statistically speaking, CRPS is often mistaken for conversion or Munchausen by proxy, did he not?
I don't really remember exactly what his words were. I took a few notes from the conversation that I had with him, and I know that there was some general discussion along those lines.
And yet you did not put anything in your report about Dr. Kirkpatrick, did you?
Yes, I believe there's a whole section about his medical records.
Yeah, except for the fact that you did not tell anyone in that report that he had warned you off of going after the Kowalskis.
It's completely irrelevant for a child protection team medical evaluation because that's the whole point of the evaluation and gathering all the records. The problem in these cases is that the treating physicians have not done that. And so the fact that he, who sent her to Mexico for the ketamine coma, told me not to investigate child abuse, it was completely irrelevant to me because my job was to investigate child abuse. So if I had come away from my job saying, I was supposed to do this, but this doctor told me not to, so I'm not doing it, and there's no evidence of anything here, I would not have been doing my job even remotely near a standard of care.
Do you not understand the importance of putting both sides of the story in your report?
The both sides of the story is the responsibility of the various people who are going to present it to the court. My job as the medical director for the child protection team is to do what I need to do to assist the investigators and the detectives and the attorneys that are involved in the case as to whether there is evidence to support a diagnosis of whatever type of child abuse is being assessed. So it's not my responsibility to lay out some whole long argument about what it might be otherwise if I have extensive evidence to support that it's a type of child abuse.
Dr. Smith, you know there wasn't a single child psychologist or child psychiatrist that diagnosed what you were claiming. You're aware of that, right?
That's also irrelevant.
So you are the ultimate decider of medical issues which you have minimal or no training in.
I have extensive training.
Yes, but you're not.
It's a proffer. You can answer, Dr. Smith.
I have extensive training in evaluating child abuse and neglect. Medical child abuse is a child abuse pediatric diagnosis. There is a parallel track in psychiatry where there's a thing called factitious disorder imposed on another, which is assessing the perpetrator or the caretaker in that scenario. But I don't need a psychiatric degree to assess medical child abuse. I'm very well trained to evaluate medical child abuse based on my child abuse pediatrics experience and board certification.
Well, there's not a single child psychologist or psychiatrist that agreed with you. You do realize that, don't you?
No, I don't.
Well, name a child psychologist or psychiatrist that examined Maya Kowalski who agrees with you.
Well, that wasn't their job to write in the report whether there's medical child abuse. So that specific thing documented by, for example, Dr. Cabot or Dr. Katzenstein, I don't know. Honestly, I'd have to look back to see if they ever documented that as one of their diagnoses. But that's not their job. My job is to assess that, and if I present adequate evidence to the court can act on that. So, you know, the court has every ability to pull all these people in, including Dr. Kirkpatrick, including Dr. Hanna. I think they testified in the dependency action. And if the judge decides that there's serious question about whether I'm right, then, you know, the court makes that decision based on the evidence that they receive. That's not my job to litigate the whole thing and put out all of the potential possibilities in the case and say, I'm the child abuse pediatrician, but I don't really know if there was child abuse here, because in this case, there clearly, in my opinion, was child abuse here.
Yeah. So you did not put in any of the conclusions or any of the data from Eagle's Wings and those therapists and psychologists that saw the Kowalskis, did you?
There was a licensed clinical social work intern who saw Maya and her family at Eagle's Wings. And I don't honestly know where that was in the pile of records when I was writing up my report. I kept writing part of the report, having to do other things, writing part of the report, having to do other things. And I inadvertently did not include that in my report.
Well, you did research it enough to realize that Rebecca Johnson had a master's degree and over 20 years of experience as a therapist at Eagle's Wings. Did you not?
Well, the question really in terms of my part is whether—
I'm just asking you if you knew that or not, ma'am.
I knew I'd have to look and see exactly what her credentials were. I'd certainly, defer to you if you're reading her credentials off. But it's irrelevant unless she did the whole thing I did, looking at all these medical records and has expertise in medical child abuse, for her to be able to say one way or the other if there was child abuse or not.
Okay. Look, did anybody agree with your assessment that there was no CRPS?
Yes, I believe they did.
Who?
I believe that there were multiple people on the hospitalist team that didn't think she had it. And I believe that although there was probably some question about whether she might have some sort of amplified pain disorder, the pain management team didn't think she had CRPS.
Well, amazingly enough, we did have Dr. Elliott in here to testify, and he never said that she did not have it. None of the doctors so far testify, A, that they were experts in CRPS, or B, that she did not have it. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not. I wasn't supposed to watch any of the testimonies. So I have no idea what people talk
Gather
about.
that. From your investigation, though, at the time, did it come to your attention? Nowhere in any of the records did anyone who had any expertise in this, that is a pain management doctor, a neurologist, or a anesthesiologist, ever agree with your assessment that there was no CRPS?
I think I just answered that. Yes, I believe there were people that had the same opinion.
Okay. What did you check with Dr. Spiegel, a board certified neurologist that treated Maya and confirmed CRPS?
Objection assumes facts, not evidence.
Go ahead and answer.
Dr. Spiegel had this 10-year-old child do hyperbaric oxygen treatment, I believe, on 40 occasions in a row when she also got ketamine on some of the same days. So I wasn't terribly worried about whether he thought or did not think that she had CRPS.
Because you'd already decided in your mind that a board certified pediatrician with his years of experience was not qualified to render an opinion on that. Is that right?
Objection misrepresents the credentials, and I ask for comment on another credibility of another witness.
Go ahead and answer.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Barr,
Yeah.
a board certified neurologist, he testified and confirmed CRPS. Did you put that in your report?
I don't know that I specifically said that he said that diagnosis. I think, as I recall, without going into the stack, that I did say in the history that Dr. Kirkpatrick had diagnosed her with that. Those people might have had that opinion. I don't think, based on my review of the CRPS literature and discussions with physicians since then, and in the context of all the evidence that there was of medical child abuse, that Dr. Barr's opinion, if that was his, that she had CRPS, was reliable.
Okay, so now Dr. Spiegel is not reliable, and he's a neurologist. At least will you agree that neurology and anesthesiology are the two areas that are most involved in the investigation of complex regional pain syndrome?
I imagine those are people that typically evaluate and treat patients with complex regional pain syndrome, sure, but not all neurologists and pain management or not all neurologists or anesthesiologists are, if you will, created equally. There are some who practice at a very high level, and when I, having reviewed medical records from all kinds of providers all over the state and even other parts of the country for 35 years, read through information and see all the supporting information that they have and compare that with other information that I gather in my medical record review, I can assess whether the person that, made thousands of dollars was reliable or not. And I didn't find those people to be particularly reliable in terms of their diagnosis, even though I certainly included their information in my report.
Dr. Hanna, a anesthesiologist with over 25 years of experience in treating CRPS, you didn't put his confirmation, he did a diagnosis of CRPS in your report either, did you?
I believe in the history, I made reference to that. I'm pretty sure I did say that he made that diagnosis. But this is a doctor who was giving a 10-year-old child who was on the small side, 1,000 milligrams of ketamine, anywhere between 8 and 32 milligrams of Versed, doses of Zofran, 1,750 milligrams typically of magnesium, all at the same time in an outpatient setting with no documentation of vital signs. And there was indication in the records that appeared to me to suggest that the family member was the person monitoring the pulse oximeter. So that person, to me, is not particularly reliable in terms of whether this child needed the treatment that she was getting, whether he had made an accurate diagnosis or not. So I put his information in my report. Yes, I discounted his diagnosis.
And of course, you discounted Dr. Cantu's confirmation of CRPS.
Well, I never got any records from Dr. Cantu, so I couldn't really address that whole situation other than from the WordPress blog. This person put a 9-year-old child in a ketamine coma for days. It took her probably about a week to just be able to be discharged from the hospital after that.
So
I didn't find him reliable from what I saw.
All right. So if I'm understanding you, the fact that 3 different treating anesthesiologists specializing in CRPS, 2 different neurologists specializing in the treating of CRPS, you know more. Fair?
I don't know more. As I said, I looked at their information, and based on what was done with this particular child, I did not find their opinion to be reliable.
And who elected you to be the judge of whether all of these board certified physicians were reliable?
Nobody. I presented it to a real judge who made a determination.
Well, isn't it true, ma'am, that you are not a medical investigator? You are, in fact, a medical prosecutor.
That's absolute nonsense.
Because an investigator would include both sides of the story and let the judge decide, right?
No. The Child Protection Team medical director will assess whether there's medical evidence to support a diagnosis of child abuse, and then the dependency attorney will present that to the judge. And the other side gets attorneys also. There were 5 in this case. And they present all the information, and then the judge tries to decide, whose information is more reliable.
Here, under oath, are you telling us, are you an investigator or are you a prosecutor
I am
of
neither.
the information?
I'm a medical doctor who is an expert in child abuse pediatrics.
Mr. Anderson,
I
I'm
got
giving you very wide latitude.
I'm done.
You're finished? Okay. Mr. Hunter, anything further in proffer?
Very briefly, Ron. When you spoke with Dr. Kirkpatrick and he warned you off, did he tell you that he had last seen this child 10 months before the conversation?
I honestly don't recall if I already knew that. I might have already known that.
And when you wrote your report, you had the Tampa General Hospital records, the Lurie Children's Hospital records, the All Children's records predating October of 2016, correct?
Correct.
You know, all those hospitalizations with all those specialists that saw this child, did you see any of them suggest that CRPS was the diagnosis?
No, and multiple were experts in complex regional pain syndrome.
Thank you.
Is the proffer complete?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, Madam Court Reporter, note that the proffer is now closed. Dr. Sally Smith, you had looked at a little report during your testimony. Can you hand that to
Yes.
me? I'm going to hand it to the
You can
clerk.
keep it if you want.
Okay, I'm going to hand it to the clerk. Let's mark it as whatever the next number for plaintiff for ID purposes. And just tell us what that number is. So the report that Dr. Smith looked at during her testimony in front of the jury is ID'd as 2804. It's not in evidence. May,
I'm sorry, I think you said in front of the jury, I think you meant not.
no, earlier during her testimony, she had pulled out a report, and that is what we just identified. Now, does Dr. Sally Smith, is she released or does she need to remain under subpoena?
She's released by plaintiff.
Released, Your Honor. You can watch them.
If you are released, you are no longer subject to the rule of sequestration.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, let's be back here, everybody, at 1:30. I will try to review Mr. Anderson's edits to the jury instruction. If you could let Mr. Altenburn
Here I am talking, and I was muted. Okay, unfortunately, they didn't go hard on her, unfortunately. So I'm going to go for now because I just wanted to watch Sally, and I'm going to keep up on that shooter in Maine. But thank you for being here, Grandma Anna. Appreciate you.